So welcome to, you've probably heard or seen, the refreshed Royal Rota from ITV, our now weekly podcast. For some reason, we've signed up to do this every single week. So available, where can we get this? On mobile? YouTube,
Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
And other favourite podcast platforms.
I think it's on our website as well.
The things that haven't changed is that I'm here, you're here. We're both still talking about the Royals and there's still plenty to talk about. What has changed is we're now going to have, we tried it last week, your weekly rundown, Robinson's Royal Rundown. That's happening.
Found me a theme tune yet?
Well, I think I'm going to give you a minute and I'm going to time you to give us all the Royal news in around about a minute.
Okay.
And then we'll have some sort of behind the scenes chats. We've been out and about. We were with the Queen yesterday.
Yep. And we'll show you some interviews that we can run in a longer form than some of them that you may have seen on television.
So a bit of behind the scenes stuff as well. And another busy week. So before we get into Harry and Meghan, whether they're royal or not royal, whether they can call themselves Sussex Royal, when they're leaving, some new news, of course, on Harry and Meghan and when they're leaving. Do you want to do the Robinson's Royal rundown?
So this week, we started the week with Kate did a podcast with Giovanna Fletcher, the Happy Mum, Happy Baby podcast,
right,
talking about her experiences of motherhood, the pressures of motherhood, and her new survey on the early years.
And she went through everything, didn't she? Actually, I'm interrupting your Royal rundown.
That's
Carry on.
fine.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
We had Prince Andrew's 60th birthday, which
low-key birthday.
Just an opportunity for you to talk some more about flags.
Your turn this week.
The Queen returned to work in London for her first engagement since she came back from Sandringham for her winter break. We had Prince Charles. It was 50 years since his first major speech on the environment, which he gave in 1970, and he gave an interview this week to the Sustainable Markets Council.
50 years of Prince Charles speeches. I mean, we could go through them all. We might be here a while.
We might be here a while. And then we've had a lot of details on Harry and Meghan's future and how that will look, and the next few weeks, what they're going to be doing, but also the implications for their staff and potential implications for their branding.
Right, I think that was about a minute or thereabouts. We should do a little fanfare at the end, maybe, when you've got to the end of the minute. And at the end, we'll do a Robinson's Royal Roundup or something like that. And that
something like that, and I will give you what's coming up.
I think what probably is the biggest news, isn't it, is Harry and Meghan and all the rest of it. So yesterday was like a double whammy of news. Firstly, that they can't or won't be able to use Royal in all of their brandings. What have they got? Sussex Royal Instagram.
Yep.
With 11.2 million followers.
Yep. They have got the sussexroyal.com website.
Right, which is only a few weeks old. They only launched it a few weeks ago.
The very sort of slick website that they launched at the same time that they announced that their intention to step back as senior members of the family. They've got their charitable foundation,
which they've registered, because we've seen it registered as a sort of company name, Sussex Royal.
Sussex Royal.
So all of this is going to need a bit of rebranding.
It's going to need a bit of a rethink,
right.
Yes, because there is a big problem with the word royal.
What is the problem? Because, you know, a few people said to me, you've got the Royal Lake pub down the road, you've got, I don't know, you've got Royal attached to other things. What's the problem with attaching the word royal to all of their branding?
Well, just because they are royals and they are members of the royal family, if they are going to try and do commercial ventures, they can't just use that word royal. It's trademarked, and there is a law around that word. And
it's a trademark law that basically means that there's an association with the Queen. Now, I suppose Harry does have an association with the Queen. He's her grandson, but if he's stepping out of the royal family and therefore not doing any official royal duties, not becoming a working member of the royal family, it looks like the courtiers in Buckingham Palace have said, well, it's not just the law, mate, but it's also, it's also you can't attach this royal tag to everything you're doing because you're not going to be.
You're not going to be working anymore. Yeah, the problem is not with the word Sussex. Sussex is fine, but them trading off the word royal is a problem.
So we think the Queen, a lot of people said, look, the Queen has put her foot down here. It probably isn't as dramatic as that, is it? It's just essentially that it's the practicality of Harry and Meghan's decision to exit the royal family.
Yeah, and it's one of these. They always said there were going to be a lot of complex issues to work through as they transitioned from working members of the family to this new life. And I think this is one of those complex matters.
Right, and we can talk about the transition, all the dates in a minute. But we were with the Queen, almost. Well,
we were behind a barrier.
Yeah, we were behind the barrier near the Queen. We did actually speak yesterday, didn't we, about maybe the Queen would come across and give us an interview about Harry and Meghan. And
wishful thinking.
I did ask, but I was rejected. But she was opening a brand new hospital in London, very much standard royal duty, if you like. But this is, the hospital thing might be something she's done millions of times before, but managing the exit from her family of two key members is all pretty new to her.
And I always find that amazing about the Queen, is that with all this going on, we know how much there's going on because we talk about it all the time, that she still is back in London, business as usual, opening a hospital, meeting people, just carrying on like normal. But
there was a great picture, wasn't there, when the Queen met some kids with crowns on their heads, and she said, "What very nice crowns."
Very nice crowns, yeah. But I think this is all very new for her and for the family. It's and they're going to have a transition period, but they're also going to have a review after 12 months of how this is working and whether it's working.
So we spoke to a few people outside that hospital yesterday. It was funny, isn't it, how the Queen just draws the crowd?
Yeah.
Well, we got there quite early because we were always told to, and there wasn't that many people there. And then people turn up, oh, who's coming? Oh, the Queen. And then
it's cold and raining.
It was wet.
Stand there
it was
and
miserable.
They wait. Amazing.
And the people were watching out of the windows all in that street near Tottenham Court Road in central London, if you know the area at all. But we spoke to a couple of people there, and we sort of asked them what they made of this whole royal thing. Is it fair what the Queen is doing, or are Harry and Meghan being treated badly? What do you make of the fact the Queen's sort of saying, you know what, you're going to leave the royal family, you can't have the royal tag anymore?
No,
fair or not?
I think that's fair.
Yeah?
I don't think so.
You don't?
She's not disowning him as a grandson, is she? So why not let him use the title? You can leave your family, but you're only physically leaving them. They're still your family.
You're still a member of the royal family,
Yes,
so you're entitled to
indeed.
use it. But you think it's
performing-
fair to...
He's not performing public duties, so and they want to be independent. So I think, they should.
She's right to do
Mr.
it.
and Mrs.
Yeah, it's quite strictly controlled, the use of the term royal, so not everyone can have it. I can't use it, you can't use it.
No,
so
no.
you think they should have it or shouldn't have it? I mean,
No comment.
right? Why not? What's the no comment for? Because
I don't think it's our place to make any comment. That's between the Sussexes and the Queen.
Right, actually, see, therefore, whatever they decide to do, that's fine.
That's their business, yes.
Right, but the use of the word royal is quite strictly controlled, so therefore,
I realise that.
Therefore, do you agree that you shouldn't really have it if you're going to leave the country and effectively leave the royal family?
I think that's probably the case.
So the Queen's right to put her foot down here.
She is indeed.
Okay, see, I've got to be out of you in the
we
end.
support the Queen.
And that woman at the end there really didn't want to give me her view, but we managed to get one out of her. I think she was definitely on the Queen's side on this matter.
I think we got there in the end.
We got there in the end. Anyway, I mean, it was, to all intents and purposes, a very nice visit for the Queen. But and interestingly, she was out and about yesterday on Prince Andrew's birthday, and we'll come to that shortly.
Well.
But after we got back from the cold, damp, wet street, we had a very interesting pieces of information, actually quite a lot of information from the Sussex team about what's going to happen in the coming weeks. And there's quite a lot happening in the next few weeks with Harry and Meghan. We can't yet have a Harry and Meghan free podcast, but I'm sure we will in future episodes. But let's just run through about what we know.
So they will remain working members of the family up until the 31st of March, when this spring 2020 transition period takes effect.
Right. So the kick-in date is a bit like a financial calendar year in the UK. It's the end of March.
End of March.
So from the 1st of April, they are, what do you call them, free agents, private citizens, whatever, just not royal anymore.
Yep, and so from the 1st of April, that date, there is no need then for them to have that Buckingham Palace office and their Buckingham Palace staff, because they're no longer working royals, and they will then be represented by what they're calling their UK Foundation team.
Yes, interesting, the UK Foundation team, whatever that is. So they're keeping some staff here, we don't think very many, but they're going to have an office here of some form, and they all kick in on the 1st of April. And then, and talking about Harry will remain, they say, a major, a lieutenant commander and a squadron leader, and any honorary positions he had in the military, he will not use them over 12 months, but nor will they replace him, because they're doing this sort of transition period.
Yeah, this review after 12 months.
There was a bit of clarity on that, wasn't there? Clarity on the titles, we've had it before. They'll keep HRH, His and Her Royal Highness, but they're not actively use them. And they'll still be called the Earl and Countess of Dumbarton and the Baron and Baroness of Kilkeel, which is in Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland. And I think we will get some confirmation of what happens around the Sussex Royal title when they launch their new non-profit organisation, which is currently got Sussex Royal.
I mean, the clue that we had with that yesterday is the use of the word, quote, royal, said their office, needed to be reviewed. Discussions are still ongoing. However, a change will be announced alongside the launch of their new non-profit organisation. In other words, we are going to remove royal. We'll announce that change when we're good and ready, not just when the Daily Mail had it on their front page, is kind of what they're saying. And then a list of engagements, actually, will start quite soon, in a week's time. Yep,
so we have, they will be back in the UK for what we're billing their farewell tour.
Well, we know Harry's back at the next week on Friday, the 28th of Feb. We don't think Meghan's back that soon. She's going to join him from the 5th of March. But do you want to have a run through about everything that they told us is going to happen in the next few weeks?
So Harry, next Friday, he's going to drop into a recording session with the Invictus Games Choir. And John Bon Jovi's going to be there because they're recording his song Unbroken.
It's not a bad one. Do you think Harry's going to sing Unbroken with him? Just for Invictus Games, that's a recording. Then on the 5th of March, there's like the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th. So that's actually a concentrated week, isn't it? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, when Harry and Meghan are doing a lot of things together.
Yeah, some together, some solo engagements. So that will kick off the first time we'll see them together since the announcement that they'll be stepping back. Actually, since we saw them at Canada House together, so we haven't seen Meghan in public since then. Will be on the 5th of March, the Endeavour Fund Awards, which they've done together for the last couple of years. And it's
we went to, actually we've been to the last two, haven't we? Where it's an awards for people from the military who've overcome some big challenges.
Wounded, injured and sick service personnel that have overcome challenges. And we then will see Harry on his own with Lewis Hamilton, so another
the Formula One driver,
name.
Lewis Hamilton.
They're officially opening the Silverstone Experience together.
That's on the 6th of March. So then Saturday, the 7th of March, there's a Mountbatten Music Festival at the Royal Albert Hall.
And then on the 8th, this will be an important day for the Duchess, who is going to mark International Women's Day at some sort of solo engagement, we think.
Now, I remember when she did that last year, wasn't it? And where she was still pregnant on the last International Women's Day, and she was at that event in the Strand in Aldwych, where she, it was on the panel. We spoke to the singer, didn't we?
Annie Lennox.
Annie Lennox, that's right. It's all coming back to me now. So we spoke to the singer Annie Lennox. They did a panel. Quite a big thing for Meghan.
Different song. It's all coming back to me now.
And they
lost on you.
And I thought it was quite it's quite a big moment for her, because this is her passion, isn't it?
Her big passion. We know how important sort of female empowerment is to Meghan, and she spoke on that panel. And I've always thought that she's at her best on those sort of public speaking without notes. I think she's incredibly impressive when she does that, and she was last year at that event.
There. And then I presume the 9th of March, therefore, could be the big exit.
Yeah.
The 9th of March is Commonwealth Day.
It's Commonwealth Day. They'll be at a Commonwealth service at the Abbey with the royal family. So we will see them there alongside the rest of the family. The Queen will be there, and it is usually the senior royals do all usually go.
And that could be it until their departure. But we know that Harry and Meghan will be back in April, because he's going to the London Marathon in his capacity as the patron.
Well, he might be back. That might be him on his own. We might see him in April as patron of the London Marathon.
And they're both going to go to Invictus Games.
Which is in The Hague in May.
OK, so, and then...
I think that is what they've always said, is that, things like the Invictus Games, Centre Barley,
London Marathon, those things that they're patron of.
They will support the things that they're...
But they'll be doing it as high-profile, private individuals rather than members of the royal family.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So how we cover that is...
and that's... Is it our job to do it anymore, or should we give it to other people to do?
Yeah, good question.
No longer royal people, so maybe they don't come under the Royal Bureau. Maybe we weren't talking about them on this podcast. We'll have to go into a separate podcast. Anyway, we digress. I thought thought there was interesting stuff about Prince Charles this week. I mean, everyone knows that Prince Charles has been concerned about the environment. People might not know that he gave his very, very first speech on this matter in
1970.
Which is quite some time ago, 19th of Feb.
1970.
On his brother's birthday, 19th of Feb, 1970. And recently, because there wasn't a recording of that speech, Prince Charles reread the speech. And here's some extracts from it. So this is Prince Charles reading the speech that he gave in 1970, 50 years ago.
We are faced at this moment with the horrifying effects of pollution in all its cancerous forms. There is the growing menace of oil pollution at sea, which almost destroys beaches and certainly destroys tens of thousands of seabirds. There is chemical pollution discharged into rivers from factories and chemical plants, which clogs up the rivers with toxic substances and adds to the filth in the seas. There is air pollution from smoke and fumes discharged by factories and from gases pumped out by endless cars and aeroplanes. There are 55 million of us on this island, using non-returnable bottles and indestructible plastic containers. It is not difficult to imagine the mountains of refuse that we shall have to deal with somehow.
So 1970 that was. He was talking about indestructible plastic items, the waste that we're all producing as a country of 55 million people, which we were then. We're more like 65, 70 million these days. And it was quite, well, Prince Charles will always say this, quite prescient. He was ahead of his time.
Yeah, ahead of his time. But it's sort of, it's one of those things that he hasn't given up on for 50 years. He has plugged away at this and everyone else has sort of caught up with him. But he does say in a new interview that he gave for the Sustainable Markets Council that he was considered dotty at the time, which is quite
Dotty
a sweet
and
phrase.
potty is what he referred to, wasn't it? And the Sustainable Markets Council was the thing that he launched in Davos at the World Economic Forum recently to try and get sort of industry massively engaged in this. But in the interview that he gave to the SMC, he was talking very much about, you know, this is the key decade. We're at the sort of very end of our ability to change course here. And he was pretty, you know, as you'd expect from him, but he was pretty dramatic, his warnings, weren't they?
Yeah, I said that we needed to pull our fingers out and that, you know, it's the responsibility of us all to work together. It's, you know, on no one. It's everyone collectively has to play a part in this. And he does give that warning again about that it's this key decade and a shorter time really than that if we're going to have any chance.
So here's a bit of that interview that the Prince gave to the Sustainable Markets Council.
I remember years ago in the 60s, when I was a teenager, minding so much about all the things that were going on, the destruction of everything, you know, the uprooting of trees and hedgerows and draining of wet places and destruction of all the sort of interesting habitats, the destruction of so much of the centre of our towns and cities. And there is an amazing amount that can be done. It's a combined responsibility of all of us, public sector, private sector and civil society.
So as we mentioned earlier, that speech that he gave in 1970 was delivered on his brother's birthday, the 19th of March. There was a lot going on Prince Andrew's birthday this year. There was the whole Harry and Meghan announcement. There was the whole royal thing. The Queen was out of the hospital, as we've just mentioned. Prince Charles had the anniversary of his speech. Oh, and it was Andrew's 60th birthday.
Yeah, I think...
Very low-key.
Yeah, I think perhaps luckily for him, there was so much else going on that his birthday did rather get overshadowed. And but we did see...
You wonder whether the royal family kind of made it like that? You wonder whether they scheduled a lot of these things in so there was less focus on his birthday. It did feel very low-key, didn't it?
It did, but interestingly, I mean, they still, and they always do for members of the royal family, mark birthdays on social media with pictures and messages, and that still went ahead yesterday.
So there were two new pictures, we think of or at least one new picture of Prince Andrew, which was him as a baby, which Buckingham Palace released on their social media pages. His ex-wife, Fergie, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York.
Yep, there was a black and white picture of him, wasn't there, with a
stroking a dog
beside him,
looking moody at the sort of, well, thoughtful, shall we say, out the window. And his daughters as well.
Yep, there was a very sweet one of him with Eugenie. She was riding a pony. But yeah, I mean, they still marked it, and he's
He's 60.
He's 60 and he's still part of the family, which, even though he stepped back from duties.
Right. Now, you gave me the onerous task of explaining the flag situation in last week's podcast. I'm just going to draw a Union Jack flag here. Why don't you give us the update on the flag situation now that you've been investigating this matter so thoroughly?
Brief. So normally...
Oh, I'm bored.
You love flags.
Go.
Normally, flags fly on designated days across the year, and Prince Andrew's birthday is one of those designated days, and flags fly on government buildings, and council buildings can fly the Union flag if they want.
Right. So what happened to the government's buildings?
This year, because Andrew has stepped back from public duties, they were told they didn't have to fly the flag.
Right.
If they didn't want to.
Right, fine. And I mean, I didn't look that closely yesterday to see if any buildings were.
Well, interestingly, York Council, obviously he's the Duke of York, decided not to fly the flag.
So the Duke of York didn't get a flag flown in York?
He didn't.
Right.
But lots of councils I spoke to did say, look, we fly the flag 365 days of the year, and that's not going to change.
366 this year, it's a leap year. And what about Northern Ireland?
Northern Ireland.
Did they fly the flag or not?
Again, so UK government buildings in Northern Ireland, it was up to them to decide whether they wanted to fly the flag.
Okay.
But the bells did peal at Westminster Abbey.
I think this is the point where we have to stop this conversation before everybody turns off and stops listening to the podcast.
I think this is the last time we're going to mention.
We don't have to talk about flag policy anymore unless it changes significantly. Should we talk about babies?
Yes.
Kate's babies. She's had 3. But we had quite an interesting podcast from the Duchess of Cambridge mostly about George, wasn't it? But we all got called into Kensington Palace and told about this big podcast he's done, and they were quite excited about it at Kensington Palace, weren't they?
I think so. Kate sat down for half an hour with Giovanna Fletcher, who does this podcast. And
married to a singer from McFly.
Yes.
Someone Fletcher. I forget his first name.
Your kids would know.
Right. Okay. I'll ask them.
Tom
Fletcher. That's
Fletcher.
it.
And I think this is probably the most candid, personal interview we've ever seen with the Duchess of Cambridge. She has this issue of early years and childhood means an awful lot to her. She's done an awful lot of research and a lot of work around it. She's got her survey out at the moment, but I thought she came across very open, very honest, and
she was less I suppose, how do I put this delicately, less sort of forced than she is sometimes. Her delivery sometimes, I think she might get a little bit nervous or something, but she seemed very relaxed in this podcast format, didn't she?
And very
she
informed,
spoke much more maliciously.
She was very, open, talking about her own experiences and her own children.
And what did we learn from her? That she did that photo call on the steps with all of her children because she wanted to sort of share the happiness with the nation.
Yeah, but she did say,
well, she didn't say that my sister-in-law didn't do it, but anyway.
She did say she was slightly terrified, but who can blame her, having just given birth to a baby?
But she spoke about the morning sickness, the hypoderum
we all know she suffered from very bad morning sickness. But she also talked a bit about how she'd use hypnobirthing to try and help her. That was something personal she'd wanted to try and use. And she also talked about mum guilt that she gets about
when she goes to work.
And how on the day that she recorded this podcast, George and Charlotte had said, Mummy, do you really have to not be able to drop us off today? But she was very aware, I think, that she's obviously has a very privileged situation.
Here's someone with a nanny and presumably someone to help her cook and clean, which a lot of mums might say, I've got 3 jobs I'm holding down, I don't have that sort of support and help. That's when motherhood is tough.
And I think she was aware of that, but she was saying, pressures and things that mothers face, that whoever you are and wherever you are, I think she feels it, she feels the same pressures and was trying to kind of relate to other mums.
Yeah.
I thought it was incredibly open. And she also talked about her amazing granny, as she put it, and how the experiences she had with her granny growing up, she'd like to pass those on and incorporate
art and craft. And also getting out with the kids, getting muddy with the kids outside, which we know from the garden that she did earlier, was it last year at the Royal...
At Chelsea Flower Show. There were lots of, she talked about George and Charlotte being out, that they'd helped collect things for.
She likes to get her kids outside. That's one of her big things, isn't it? So, I'm talking about outside. There's been a lot of rain in the UK. Prince Charles is actually going to go and do a visit, isn't he? this week, end of this week.
He is.
Into Pontypridd in South Wales, where they've had some pretty terrible flooding.
Terrible flooding, and he will meet businesses, residents, first responders.
Yeah. It didn't go unnoticed on my social media pages that people are saying, oh, that well, at least the Prince is doing that because the Prime Minister in the UK hasn't yet done that. So just something that people had noted. Anyhow, so do you want to do the Robinsons Royal Roundup, looking ahead to
we've got coming up next
the coming week?
So I think everyone will be very interested to know that Prince Harry is out and about next Friday. As we said, he's doing this Invictus choir visit. The Duke of Cambridge will be going to Nottingham for a day of engagements on Wednesday, and the Duchess of Cambridge is going to the London Stadium in her role as patron of Sports Aid.
That's what we know of so far.
And what we can talk about so far.
Yeah. We do know that, however, that William and Kate are going ahead with their tour to Ireland.
That's following week.
But there is a clash with...
There is now a diary clash.
There's a diary clash with Harry and Meghan on one of those days.
On one of those days, the Thursday. Yep, the Thursday the 5th. So
that's the Endeavour Fund Awards, isn't it? Anyway, we'll see how that how that goes down. But I mean, there's often diary clashes. So, how would you sum up this week? I mean, I'd say it was pretty, in many ways, quite significant. We're talking now about the sort of end game for Harry and Meghan, the things that the Queen doesn't want them to have, and the focus continuing to coalesce around the Queen, Charles and Camilla, and William and Kate.
Yeah, and I think, next couple of weeks are going to be big weeks as well for the family. We'll see Harry and Meghan out, and again, Kate and William said got the tour to Ireland, so. It's going to stay busy. And
soon we're going to find out where Charles and Camilla are going on their spring tour as well.
Yep.
We think Europe, we don't know. We are still in the realms of guessing. So I think we've had enough on the podcast this week. Thank you very much for continuing to listen and to watch. Please continue to give us your suggestions about what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear more of or less of, etc. We'll try and make the Robinsons Royal Roundup and the Robinsons Royal Rundown. I have to get all my R's in one place. Anyway, we hope you like the refreshed Royal Rota, and we'll be back with you next week. Bye-bye.